two chapters today, and that would be The Wedding and A Place to Hide. And you'll yeah, forgive me, please. I'm going off notes, which I actually wrote before the holiday, so I might have to stop and check. The pair of chapters that we're actually getting right now are a very interesting set. I think I say that every single time, but what can I do? I love this series. A very busy set of chapters, though in very contrasting ways. The wedding, of course, we get the busyness of a social event. So you're listening to different conversations, you've got gossip going on, you've got the actual event, asa the actual ceremony of the wedding. You've got dancing, you've got meeting new people, you've got meeting old people, you've got people that you already know, re-meeting Crumb, that idea. It's all just busy and bright and enjoyable until it's not, because then in A Place to Hide we get this mad scramble to safety, or trying to get to safety, trying to figure out where they're not going to die. And that's just, like, we never really get a moment to slow down between them. Because some people would say, well, we look at that conversation between Dodge and Muriel, and we could slow down during that, but we really can't, because even that's becoming an argument between, it's like watching a tennis match. And then we're off on a marathon, triathlon actually, whichever one involves the people that have to just shoot the targets while on skis, that thing. It's this mad dash just all the way through of just information coming flying at us. And because of that, we are at risk, just like the characters, of missing some key information or paying too much attention to not important information. We really see this with Harry, because Harry notices things like the fact that Ginny's dancing with different people, and the fact that Fred and George have disappeared with some Viola cousins. But he actually misses the full confrontation between Crumb and I'm never going to be able to say his name right, Xenophilius, which happens. And he knew that Crumb had issues with the man, so he knew that ahead of time, and then only catches Crumb storming away, and I don't think that would have been like a nice calm conversation going on. So it's interesting that that's actually something that's missed out completely by Harry. With that in mind, I think we should take the time to go through some of the smaller moments within this whole just scuffle of activity to get an idea of some threads that we can pull at and see where other things shift. At the beginning of the wedding chapter, but we really get a sense of how resilient these people are, because they're actually looking at what's happening, and they're looking at the war, and then they're looking beyond it. Because specifically we get Fred saying that when he gets married, like that's heartbreaking to go back through and see again. Because Fred, along with George and Ron and Harry, they're trying to picture this life beyond the war. And to say that the war is not going to just continue on forever and ever. There is an end to it. And their resilience in the face of the fact that they still have to go through the worst part of the war is this recognition that the hope, I'll live beyond it and I'll get married. But interestingly enough, we get that paired with Crumb and his remembrance of Grindelwald, who's actually 2 wars ago, because we had the first Wizarding War with Voldemort in between. So we've got this hope for the future still tied with this grief to the past, and it's not grief to the immediate past. It's not grief to the Triwizard Tournament. It's not even grief to the First Wizarding War. It is grief to the Grindelwald War and how it affected Europe as a whole. That's sort of interesting because more with Voldemort, it's more Britain. But Grindelwald was Europe, and we're seeing that that still affects people. And we've got now this growing time scale of important bits and pieces that we're actually sticking together. Because really, really up to this point, the furthest we've gone back was in the Half-Blood Prince, which is the past of Tom Riddle. So the furthest we went back was learning about Tom Riddle's mother and father and how they met and got together. Grindelwald's beyond that, and then we're actually going to get the story of Ariana Dumbledore, which is even further beyond that, because that occurred before Grindelwald even rose to power. So we've got just this growing time scale that can be very overwhelming. And that's sort of the heartbreaking part for me to realize, is that really, really deep down, it doesn't actually matter. The events of the entire series, and particularly the continuing events of Deathly Hallows, would have played out without this knowledge of Dumbledore's past or the Deathly Hallows. And in fact, we realize that with continuing through the Deathly Hallows, that while the book is named after it, it's actually something that Harry has to not choose. He has to look at the Horcruxes and the Hallows, and he has to let the Hallows go. They all come back to him eventually, but he has to make the choice not to go with his hands out for them. He's not allowed to do that if he is to progress. He needs to go after the Horcruxes, and it's this moment of letting the past go through letting the Hallows go and forcing the Horcruxes to let go. It is this recognition that nothing else can be done about that. The past is the way the past is, and we can mourn that, certainly, and we can remember it, and we can ponder on it, and we can swear to never repeat it, but we cannot change it. Not on a grand scale that we're looking at. And I think that's why we do get such an extended time scale, is so that we're not tempted to point at something like the Time Turners and say this could all be different. It's gone too far back now, and too much is just tangled into it, that we just have to accept that and let it go. So having these two conversations, sort of the hope for the future and the need to mourn yet let go of the past, I don't think we've quite gotten to the let go part, because Crumb still gets in a fight. And Harry ends up listening to this conversation between Dodge and Miriam, not really remembering that he needs to take both of these accounts with a grain of salt. You cannot fully deify somebody like Dodge is trying to do with Dumbledore, but I don't think you can also fully vilify him either. I don't think you can fully vilify anybody in this series. Maybe Umbridge? Like, even Riddle, we get enough of his past that we could sort of see going through that really with him, it's a lot of what he's paying for is the sins of the mother and father, through the use of the love potion. So even in those moments, and we're going to see that especially with King's Cross, even in those moments, I don't think you can vilify or deify any of these people completely. And that's just something that Harry's not keeping in mind here. He's just hearing that it seems to be Miriam winning. Mariel winning. Because that can be what happens. It's really a lot easier to just tear somebody down than it is to help build them up while recognizing that they are a person and thus are flawed. It's really easy to just rip somebody apart. It's not easy to accept them as flawed and still be a good or great person. And I think we can point to Dumbledore being a great person. Deeply flawed, yes, but still what he did, what he achieved, is on the scale of great. Is he a god on earth? No, definitely not. But is he the scum of the earth? I don't think we could say that either. So we have to be really careful with conversations like this, that we're not letting somebody just railroad us or gaslight us into thinking that we can't have a little bit of both. That Dumbledore either has to be the worst thing in the world or the best thing. Or any of these characters, really. And then, so we have this conversation, and then we have Kingsley's Patronus show up. I really want to figure out how to do this speaking Patronus thing. Like, how do I give a message to these things? Because that seems really cool. And we are off and running. Because before we were off and talking, and now we're off and running. And things are a little messy. This is the first time we're running into the issue of the trace. Though I'm also curious how we had Death Eaters actually get into the wedding. Because we have been reassured that there are a lot of protective spells on the burrow. So something's gone really screwy, and our golden trio is off, and they realize that something's gone extra really screwy when they get sort of caught up with some Death Eaters, and everything goes to heck in a handbasket, and we're suddenly having a fight in a late night diner. And of course, the answer that Hermione gives on this one, the possibility she gives, is that Harry still has the trace on him. And I actually got really annoyed reading this because, again, it is this moment where Harry's become the easy target to point to and say it's all your fault. Because it's not. Because the trace requires magic use to track. And Harry hasn't done any magic up to the point that they're literally fighting with Death Eaters. So the Death Eaters are already there. Unless we have sort of like the Dobby issue where he's picked up residual magic. And if that's true, then the last magic it picked up was Hermione apparating them. And they've physically moved away from that spot. So again, I think if you take time to logically think it through, we have to be Sherlock Holmes here, which is to eliminate the impossible, and whatever is left, however improbable, is the truth. And it seems really improbable, if not impossible, that it is Harry's wand being tracked through the trace, because the trace should be broken at 17. The Ministry had not fallen up to that point, so there's no possible way that they were there to prevent the trace being removed. The trace requires magic to track, and Harry has not performed any magic. If it does track sort of magic around them, then they would have had a lot of issues up to this point before, and the last track would have been to the apparition point, and not to the diner where they're actually caught. So we remove the argument that it is the trace, and then you need to start thinking of alternatives. Because that's the dangerous point, is saying it's obviously the trace, and then you're not thinking about any other possibilities. And we know the possibility is the taboo on Voldemort's name. Again, if we had removed that possibility, if we said, okay, it's probably not the trace, because logically that doesn't make sense. Logically, what else could have been done, and what were we doing that could have led to this point? Because I really hate blaming Harry here, because literally Harry's silently under his invisibility cloak for a good portion of this scene. Hermione and Ron are literally talking about Voldemort out in the open. Like, Hermione only lowers her voice after the waitress showed up, and Ron doesn't even seem to. No, not after the waitress. After the Death Eaters actually come in, and they think they're other guests. She lowers her voice. Ron doesn't seem to, because Ron then insults the coffee and the waitress hears. So, they're just la da 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 Voldemort, boom, and we're done. And yes, it is Hermione that actually gets them caught. She is the one who uses Voldemort's name. She, like Harry being Muggle-born, or sorry, Harry Muggle-raised, but her growing up in the Muggle world, like Harry, it means that there's not as much danger attached to the name for her. There's not the fear of it. Same with Harry. And that's why we use the taboo, because the two groups that are going to get caught are either the Muggle-borns, which Voldemort wants to eliminate anyways, or the Order of the Phoenix and other people resisting Voldemort who have learned to be able to say the name. So, wah, wah, wah. Maybe could have realized this sooner. But sometimes we do just want to go for the easy answer, and a lot of times the easy answer is to blame somebody else. So, that went a whole lot of places, all over the place, but that seems to be what the chapters is, again, chapters are, again. I can speak English. So I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.